Well, yeah, right? Just try it this way then, huh? We'll try and do a little bit more intimate version. No, I don't know if this is much different. Oh, so fun, so fun, so fun. Isn't technology great, guys and gals? You know, I do have another option. Oh yeah. We got the. By the way, this is take two for posterity. Take one died. Good times. Boop 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 boop. All right, we got that updated. See, so we put that up there so people know what we're talking about, and then I know what I'm talking about, and then everybody knows what's going on here. So tonight and for this show, for posterity this evening, welcome to Escaping Dystopia. My name is Roy. I'm your host. Welcome back, everybody who was watching earlier and then left and then came back. Hopefully this works a little better. I have an idea for upgrading our broadcasting equipment next time, so we'll pull the trigger on that. In the house, what up, G Money? Always fun to have G around. You need to come visit us here in Colorado, my friend. Hopefully, we'll have a new studio to broadcast from here in a couple months, but more on that later. I was going to run real quick through some of the stuff I wanted to talk about tonight. If anybody wants to listen, you don't have to watch, and we might do this as a radio show at some point. Because who wants to look at my face? It's all still sunburned today, right? Yeah, you can see that? Thanks, global warming. I mean, sure, it's 50 degrees above normal in the Arctic, but it's 70-something degrees today here in Colorado. It's February. There's an R on that second part here in Colorado, and it's warm today, as you can tell by my face. Spent some good time outside today. All right, so for the show tonight, we are going to answer a few questions and talk about some things. Why that press conference? We'll talk about that. The Flynn resignation. A little bit more about the Russia connection. Because this is a show that's not only about politics, I also wanted to talk a little bit about concepts called Abiogenesis and Panspermia. A couple fun ideas and some news this week actually that came out, so we'll talk about that. Then we'll have a little segment on white people talking about racism and why they can sometimes, which is always fun. And then about ICE raids, how great they are and how they're making the country great, as it were. And then an idea that I had. So we'll see if that works out. A little bit about Sweden, Bowling Green, and Atlanta, and what they all have in common. And we actually found an issue that the White House will clarify stuff. There's something like if somebody says something wrong about this particular thing, they will clarify it. They will actually correct themselves. We found a topic about which they will correct themselves. It's true, there is one. Is that working better? Sorry, if I told you what was propping up the camera, you would all laugh at me. But that's all good. And then there's also a little bit, turns out today somebody got their disinvited from CPAC and then also had their book deal canceled. So that's always good to see for a particular type of person like that guy is that happened to. So maybe we'll get to that. But with that being said, let's get started. I guess, right? Is that exciting? We'll see. So, the thing that was probably the strangest thing that happened this week is this whole president thing that we got where the president goes after our press directly and attacks them. The point of this, and this is pretty straightforward, and I'll cover it for you. What he has to do in order to really get stuff going crazy is destroy completely and utterly everybody's concept of, so nobody will trust anything that comes out, especially not his supporters. And that's the thing. They won't trust what comes out of the press. They'll only trust what comes out of Twitter from the president's feed. That's the whole point of this. To set up this fight is to because his supporters, like the core of this, like they believe this without doubt and without question. And so just going after everything that's possibly negative as fake news, this is to try and inoculate anyone from new stuff that's coming out. All the news that is bad is fake, and he's the victim here. And so that's what the whole point of this was. So you get out there and you pick a fight with these guys, and then everybody comes back at him, right, hard, because, he's making up stuff left and right, saying things that aren't true at all. One of the things, and this was always an interesting one, because he actually, on the Reagan number of electoral college votes, and this is a good one if you're ever discussing this with Trump voters, to point out, like, just being factually wrong about something. And then the question that was asked was wonderful, because it was that whole setup is, why should anyone trust you when you are so willing to put forth information that's easily verifiably wrong? And then you didn't answer it, of course. And this is something else that's going to be really kind of frustrating going forward. I hope everybody just kind of relax into this whole thing for a little bit, because he's not going to answer these questions and this kind of press conference stuff. This was about, like, announcing his press secretary, or the new labor secretary, after the other one pulled out. But it ends up, because these things are so rambling and ridiculous, making 7 different types of news, which then, of course, everybody wants to run, and it's all so outrageous and ridiculous. And then that just creates this maelstrom of news where nobody really knows what's going on, because that was that, and then he heads down on vacation again to Florida. But the point of this survey and the point of the news conference is really to just set up this oppositional situation between his supporters and people trying to convey information about the outside world. The difficulty with this whole media thing is, too, as he sets up this oppositional situation, is, it's only the bad press that's actually bad and the enemy of the people. The good press, Fox, is actually okay, because they're not the bad part. So that's the idea, is to form this hard diamond core of supporters that can't be reasoned with and can't be changed and can't be slowed down, and knock them. And so then to have that be the core of the GOP, and then now nobody, and this is why you see a lot of people who are in the party not wanting to go against him at all, because that's to consolidate the base and keep them all in line, when all of them are absolutely, positively sure they have to be in line with the president. Then there's not going to be any criticism, and all the criticism appears to be partisan or part of the media that's going against him. So that's the whole point of that. That was the whole point of that press conference. Excuse me, and sending out that ridiculous survey, which I hope just everybody laughed at. But that's the idea. So nobody will believe anything bad that they read about him from the media. Now, speaking of which, you had the actual really big thing that happened this week with the whole Russia connection. And this was what's probably going to lead to impeachment, is that the Flynn resignation. The National Security Advisor, which is a big role, has to resign because of connections to a foreign power. So this is big, it's very huge. There's other stories coming out now that include confirmation of his personal lawyer being in Russia, hand-delivering part of this plan to move beyond the sanctions that are Russia, so they have some business deals. I'm not going to go too far into it. You can read about that in a couple other places. That's going to come out excuse me, on real media over the next few days, that there's actually a little bit more hard evidence that there was direct collusion between people in the Trump campaign and the Russian government that have to do with dropping these sanctions, because there's so many zeros, billions upon billions of dollars tied up in that those business dealings. So we will see. That's going to keep coming on. People are digging like mad. People are digging everywhere, and then there's leaks coming out of everywhere, left, right, and center. So this is the stuff where it's kind of just sit back and let this happen a little bit. for folks who are going with the cross-out plan, just wait. The issue with that is like until the GOP, that's why he's trying to get them in line so hardcore in line, because until they can break ranks, you're not going to see anything happen. This is why the 2018 is also incredibly important for the next Saturday. For 2018 is so important because if you want to see real investigations into what's been going on and some real actually see impeachment happen, you're going to have to see it come out of the Democrats controlling Congress. That's how our system of government works. Right now, even like the emoluments, and this is one of the things from that came out where China approved a trademark that the Trump Corporation had been trying to get for over a decade. This is very valuable, of course, to them because now they can license that name in China to anybody who wants to buy or build stuff, which, you know, in China might be not the horrible thing. We'll see. But it's one of those things where it sounds like they might have gone a little bit outside their own law to grant this trademark to him, and that being that foreign government giving a thing of great value to the president is a problem unless Congress makes a law that says it's okay. Congress already made law, they already changed that to let Mattis take over at the Department of Defense because there was supposed to be a, I believe, 7-year waiting period before military could take over what's supposed to be a civilian role. But they then passed a rule like law. So if you want to see real investigations and real teeth coming out of Congress, because that's where it's got to come, you have to vote for Democrats next time. Just period, up and down the board. So you'll see more coming out on the Russia thing. We'll see. Without Congress really investigating hard, you're not going to get hardcore facts, and you're not going to be able to get subpoenas. The court's going to take a long time to come around on the other side anyway. So serious patience on that. So there was some news this week, moving on to the next thing. Excuse me, about Ceres. Ceres is a little rock that floats around way up in the sky. Somewhere in between here and Jupiter, I believe. But there's a robot flying around up there, and it's taking pictures of it, and it looks like what they saw this week was a few organic molecules on this. There you go. Dwarf planet Ceres has organic molecules, widening the hunt for life. Scientists have seen signs of prebiotic compounds on the nearby dwarf planet Ceres, teasing the possibility of life. So essentially it looks like there's some sort of tarish material upon this thing. Let's see. NASA's Dawn spacecraft has discovered organic molecules on Ceres, according to a paper published in the journal Science on Friday. These so-called building blocks of life appear to be native, forming naturally on the dwarf planet rather than being deposited by comets. So that is the theory of abiogenesis. I will read that to you real quick. This is the original evolution of life or living organisms from inorganic or inanimate substances. To construct any convincing theory of abiogenesis, we must take into account the condition of the Earth about 4 billion years ago. This is actually kind of funny, and this is kind of... Yes, let's bring that and see what happened. I know. Oh, there's some cool movies. I guess there's that new movie about that, and there's a fun one. It's called Infini, I believe. Infini, if you're into the Netflix. That's about exactly that. I think that's what that space, or that Life movie with Captain Planet from... Not Captain Planet. Star-Lord. What is his name? Yeah, that guy. Anyway, is he in the other new movie? I don't know. There's so many space movies coming out. But the idea here is that, and this is what's funny because, again, reading about this, there's lots of good stuff. I'm a big B sci-fi movie fan, so I run into all sorts of random stuff. But that Infini is fun, and of course, the Europa report. I think everybody's seen that already. That's a worthwhile couple hours. But anyway, this is from Google. It says, to construct any convincing theory of abiogenesis, we must take into account the condition of the Earth about 4 billion years ago. And this is why I don't actually like this at all. Does Ceres have an atmosphere? Can we drill there? I don't know if Ceres actually does have an atmosphere. Where this is coming from is inside the planet. They basically thought already that there was some water internally. I read this earlier. Yes, the stuff could be a tar-like substance, such as asphalite, according to space.com. But essentially the idea here is that these organic molecules developed here directly on this. And so that's where this theory of abiogenesis comes from, is that these organic molecules can generate from inorganic ones. Now, the thing, like I said earlier, it says, like that part that I'm kind of trying to highlight here as being the question is, we must take into account the condition of the Earth about 4 billion years ago. And this news story tells you right now that definition of this concept is wrong. We don't have to look at just the Earth. We get to look anywhere, anywhere in the universe for this happening, for these inorganic molecules. And pardon me, I had some of my lovely Diet Dr. Pepper earlier. But any of these organic molecules turning into organic ones. And the notion that they could happen anywhere, and this is why finding it on another planet or another body is very interesting, is this other notion that I was going to talk about called Panspermia, which is just sperm everywhere. It's the theory that life on the Earth originated from microorganisms or chemical precursors of life present in outer space and able to initiate life on reaching a suitable environment. So the idea here is that all this stuff on these comets or whatever flies around, hits some place that's nice, not too hot in the winter, not too cold in the summer. Reverse those, and then you've got a really nice place, like in Colorado. So the idea being that you got these water bears or whatnot floating all around the universe. Then whenever they find one of these 1 in 10 billion planets, like this one, things just start to happen there. And then a few billion years later, you have self-aware light. So that's where, this is kind of the notion, and this is part of for this escaping dystopia project, right? Because there's this website that I do and this show and all that, and then there's a book, and then there's all this other thing. But that's part of, and I had a whole discussion about this the other day, and this goes back to kind of the DeVos in the Department of Education and this concept of teaching these things that I'm talking about here, right? This is the original creation of life, and looking at, we found these organic building blocks on this dwarf planet out in outer space, and then, no, Jesus done created Adam, Eve here. It's like, so you can't, there's no evidence for that story, right, other than this part in the book, but there is evidence, right, for these organic compounds on Ceres. And there is evidence that water bears can live in outer space, and they stay and they get completely desiccated and eradicated, and then they irradiated, and irradiating them doesn't eradicate them. That's how cool they are. And there's stuff like this out there, and we've seen it. So we have each of these pieces of this puzzle, from interstellar travel to generation to all of these pieces, to generate this spark of life that then comes to this planet. There's actually another whole theory, and this is another thing, we'll go into that, but kind of the idea that even the life that we have currently evolved on Earth is actually too evolved, in a sense, for the amount of time that we have. The genes that we have are too specialized, the idea being that it would actually take longer than life has been on this planet to reach the point that we're at. Hence, lending a little bit more theory to perhaps part of this work was done someplace else on the way here. And as we spend more time exploring the solar system and looking around, maybe we can get a little bit more answers to those questions. Now, that stuff is why I care about the politics on this side, because on this, meanwhile, you've got, the guy who's taken over NASA, like, just trying to be, fucking fuck climate, and, fuck this planet and all that. But that's why we have to have this base that the political stuff just allows for this then to build on in us, to explore and understand and grab create this better world. And that's how you escape the dystopia. You build this better world. You have a better concept of where life came from, of where we're going, of what we can do with it. And that's where some of these notions come in. And there was another news story about it this week that showed this to be not fake news. So I'm going to try and talk about those sometimes, during the show. It's not political, and political, that stuff is fun and all, but that's on the other side of it, right? These things that are going on in the world are far more interesting, and but we can't send all these things out to other planets if we've got this political situation here that's just not going to work, and we don't have enough. I mean, that's why that Interstellar movie was so well done, because you had that notion that schools no longer teach that we even went to the moon as a concept, and understanding that you can lose it, and this knowledge that we have and information can disappear, and then it can become like these lies and fake news and fake history, and so it can be lost, and there is a battle going on. My next topic that I wanted to talk about earlier was why white people can call out others for racism. It's funny, especially going on now, because and this is going on also a lot of the Obama time, is, a lot of people make these just offhanded or either, subtly racist or straightforward. And there's actually a really good one that kind of the notion that being racist is like one of the worst things that a white person could be, because it just kind of crushes a lot of your opinions, right? Like, oh, you're just saying that because you're a racist. Oh, you just think that because you're... So once you get that kind of label, it's pretty damning, which is good, because it should be, because it is. Right? I mean, when I got this guy the other day, and he's like, oh, that Kenyan Muslim, blah, blah. I'm like, well, all right, yeah, I'm sure your opinion on Obama is wonderfully accurate because you think he's a Kenyan Muslim. But here's the thing that's kind of difficult about it on Facebook, and I know this because I have, super cliche, I don't have a single black friend. I have lots of them, and a lot of them I went to a very good school with, and they're very intelligent, smart people, and they are great. But if they ever try and call out bullshit on their racist friends, the only reason that they're doing it or whatever is because they're black, and then they have no standing to make that argument against another white person, which is why being a white person who call people out on that bullshit is a useful skill to have. And I'm not gonna lie, I've actually had my skills been requested at points in history, but that's why it's hard to, and it's hard for people. And the same thing is very true, I think, on a lot of the sexist discussions and sexism. It's very hard for people who are kind of, I even hate to say lower, because that's not even right, but in this social hierarchy that we have established, when those people try to establish and fight and upset that, it is always anybody who's outside of that group. That's the only reason you're doing it. It's very easy to put that label back on it. So this is one of the privileges, the white male privileges that I have, that I get to call people out on their bullshit. And I get to be respected for calling that bullshit, and I have to address that. They can't just call me out directly. Part of why I do it, and people have noticed that happens. Now, speaking of which, let's talk about some... First they came... there's this pastor, I don't know how to say his name exactly. It's this poem, and it's horrible and nasty, because this is Nazi talk, because that's where we're at. Racist person versus person who discriminates. Do you make a distinction? There's... This is a question, sorry, from everybody can see it. If they're watching, sorry. It's fine, I don't have to read it, I forget that. Of course I would make a distinction. Look, there's even like, and this is kind of what's weird. I have a linguistic thing that I try and use sometimes, and it's that capital R, like all caps versus little r versus, like the KKK and those kind of folks and David Duke, they're like all caps, racist, like no question about it, covering that. And then, you got like people who are like, goddamn, fucking and then that's, capital R racist. People who are like that all the time, anytime they see them on TV. The goddamn fucking, no, there they are, and I've known people like that. And then you have kind of that little R racist stuff, like that's what you see most of the time nowadays. And that person who discriminates, I mean, in what way? Discrimination is such a big, wide word. So that, yes, definitely there'd be a racist person versus a person who does something racist, right? So even there you have a distinction. And that's where I've kind of always used that, like, big A capitalized versus little a, big A asshole versus little asshole. Like everybody, right? Everybody's an asshole at some point every day. Or not every day, but at some point in your life, you've been an asshole to somebody. So everybody's been an asshole, right? Little a, right? And there's actually a song in that Avenue Q. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a musical from the New York City, so it's all the liberal stuff, but part of the songs, and one of the songs is, I don't know why the alt-right doesn't make this their anthem, but that Everybody's a Little Bit Racist song. And it, lays out a couple points about that. And for New York City, being that, being like, yeah, right, yeah, okay, fine. Right? And that's, again, that little r kind of racist stuff. But that, when you move on to something else and those discrimination, and then you're talking about an act, right? And an act where you have decided to do one thing different than another because of that situation. So that's when you to me, you cross into a different line on where the word means something different than just the straight up concept. I'm going to grab some water. Hold on. Modern convenience. Ignorance is huge. Yeah, the ignorance thing is really, that's where, that's how you cure that. And that seems to be like when you talk to like the people who are, well, see, that's funny, that word then that you use right there. And this is a word that I've gotten in trouble using before with people talking to them, is ignorance. I tend to use it from like a technical standpoint, as someone is simply ignorant of the facts of the situation. Everybody is, in what I say, everybody's born ignorant. You have to learn everything from there. But there is that kind of just that other, like, you just ignorant, ain't you? You ignorant. Like somebody being that thing of being, you are that lack of knowledge about things. You just one of them ignorant boys, ain't you? So yeah, and then people take that as a pretty serious insult sometimes. But yeah, and they don't know better, and the thing is that there's just the lack of experience, right? If you haven't ever, lived and been around somebody that you don't know, you're not going to learn that. And that's why, again, you have that city folk, country folk. Where in the city you're dealing with people from all different places and all different types, and you learn that, and it becomes not a big deal. And when you don't do that, you end up supporting stuff like the ICE raids and things that are happening. Now this is going to be a little bit more serious. I was going to do that poem from the pastor, and we'll do it later. But it's that first they came for the socialists. Was it? Let's be flippant about that. First they came for the socialists. Martin Moller. I can't do my German. Lugenpress. Sorry. If any of my German friends ever watch this, they'll hear that and be like, yeah, right. Geez. Yeah, there you go. First they came for the socialists. And I did not speak out because I'm not a socialist. Are they coming for the socialists? Kind so. Then they came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak out, so I wouldn't have tried. So what I'm talking about here is the people they're coming for. They, of course, being the government. And coming for means coming to get you. They're coming right now for immigrants, illegal, as they say, immigrants. Anybody who's undocumented. Anybody who came over and has stayed too long. Anybody who is waiting until harvest season to get to work. Anybody. And the way that this is happening now, and I've seen a couple stories about it, and this is the problem. They are coming now for, this is the first one, they are coming now for people, and they are trying to scare them. And the way this happens, and this is, I had the story about it, you have a raid, right, and they've got a warrant for somebody. They've got a warrant for, Hector Martinez for rape or murder. And so then they're going to go in every place around there, bang on doors, look for, hey, do you know this guy? Wave it around, 3 o'clock in the morning. Let me see your papers. We're looking for this guy, but do you have yours? And so you do that over and over and over. Is that guy, do you even think that guy's going to be there? Does that guy even exist? Do you maybe already even have him in custody? Who knows? Who knows? They're not going to find that guy. They're going to find anybody else that they're looking for. And they're looking for anybody now. And so they're looking for big numbers too. And so this is happening. We're going to see more stories about this, hopefully more information about this. One of the more disturbing things about that has been like some of the Hispanic Congress and Congress was excluded from a meeting with ICE to discuss what's going on. The executive orders from the executive, and again, this is the person who runs the law enforcement, the executive branch, the people who enforce the laws in this country, was very, very harsh. So people are going on big time, and everybody who's going to go a little bit harder and push the law a little bit more, they're the ones who are going to get the attaboys. The people who, kick down the doors and do that, they're the ones who are going to get the promotions because that's who they're trying to push now from on top. And the people who were trying to be nice and be like, hey, he's not here, let's respect their rights. And now those people are going to, I think you're going to see a shift real quick in the ICE and Border Patrol enforcement of what kind of person works there and gets that. So I do think you're going to see ICE take on a very, very nasty connotation culturally in the next couple years if this kind of stuff keeps going on. And I think it will. So that's fun. No, it's actually horrid. And we'll see how many more stories. There is the woman here in Denver who's still in... I believe she's still in the church right now. She's been in the country for 20 years now, and they're just trying to get rid of her. So hopefully we can get some more of this resolved, or at least a little bit more clarity, but clarity is not something that's going to be happening for a while. Speaking of which, so it turns out that our president only gets his news and he's been skipping his intelligence briefings too, but he gets a lot of his news from cable news, which I don't know if you've ever watched cable news, but it's not good. It's it's bad. So I had an idea, and this is my idea. And this is if you know anybody in the CIA or in the intelligence services that is like throwing up their hands or quitting, like the guy I read about here a few minutes ago. Because they just can't, this isn't working with the Trumper. Here's the idea, right? So it's like in the movie The Game with Michael Douglas. Has anybody ever seen that? It's a good movie. I liked it. In that movie, he gets this present, I should say. He's a really wealthy guy, whatever. His brother, who is the diabolical Sean Penn, gets him a present, which is in this game thing. I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but the one part is he's sitting down in his mansion at home watching the news like he does in cable news, and he's flipping to it, and the TV kind of tweaks, and then it like and you, and blah, blah, blah. And then it's a news story about him, that he's watching the news. So what our intelligence services should do is start making like CNN, or not CNN, because then he won't believe it, but like Fox style like segments on, okay, well, the Chinese just built these islands in the South China Sea, and then they're saying this, and, you know, do it like it's a news segment, but make it with actual intelligence. So he actually gets some of this information and believes it. Because I'll tell you, the thing that's killing me, this whole thing, we're going to move on to the next topic here, which is Sweden, Bowling Green, and Atlanta. I mean, this thing where, you know, he kind of watched Fox, and it was kind of, maybe it was on the background or something, and then, you know, Tucker's like, yeah, Sweden, blah, 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 here, horrible immigrants, crime, blah. Oh, did you hear about what happened in Sweden? And that's what he's talking about, like a news report that he heard on Fox. It's really bad journalism, but that's the stuff that he's using to build his worldview on, or at least to justify it. This stuff is getting a little out of control. There's the thing that's kind of weird for me, at least, is how quickly this fake news term died, and such a horrible death. Fake news, really, the concept is originally, when you ever would run across these websites, it's like this random, you know, New Century Times, whatever, with some crazy headline like Pope endorses Trump, or Hillary Clinton nearly near death, or, you know, one of those, like, just made up stories from a source where there's nobody to contact, there's no history of this place existing, no byline, none of the things that you'd actually have from a good, legitimate news source, right? That's the fake news. But instead they've, you know, turned this around where he's literally calling every major news source that is slightly critical of him fake. It's really bad. So it's the bad thing, again, is this totally inoculates his base from ever learning anything about him that could be negative. There's a Telegraph article that I actually ran into because it was posted on a Trump supporters page, and it's about how in the first month in office, Trump has spent more or as much on travel as Obama did for a year. But it's posted not as a, oh damn, made a mistake with this Trump guy, but it's posted literally as, ha, see, this is the fake news I'm talking about, guys. See, they're just trying, and that's all. And it was actually from a conservative source that's like a little bit getting a little sketchy about him spending all this money, and they put out this news article it does, and then it got picked up, and it's, you know, how it works. But that's something, it's, you know, how do you communicate with something like this, right? This is actually an example of an article you would try to use to someone who's, you know, drank the Trump aid. Tastes a little pissy, the Trump aid. But they drink it, and they drank it all. But how do you get them back when they're using actual stories that we would try to say, look, this guy's so bad, and they're using them as examples of fake news? I don't know how you can communicate to that. Just like I don't think, you know, someone who's really, really into heroin and really on a nice bender is going to listen to much that doesn't have to do with heroin. I just, you know, there's a bit of a junkie on a bender feel to this. And so that's why I think there needs to be a little bit kind of relax and let some of this kind of happen, you know, while paying attention to what is happening, especially the ICE stuff, and I think that needs to be documented really well. But the rest of it, I mean, just got to kind of let it happen and let some wheels go. And I was going to say, we did finally find something that the White House will clarify facts on. Let me read you this real quick. After initially saying Trump had only played a few holes, the White House reversed itself Monday after professional golfer Rory McIlroy posted on his website that he played 18 holes with the president. As stated yesterday, the president played golf. He intended to play a few holes and decided to play longer, Whitehouse spokesperson Sarah Sanders said Monday. Now, of all the things that they've lied and misconstrued and blah, 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 that is what they come clean about. He actually played a full round of golf. So that's what they care about, golf. And I'm about to close up real quick. For our last person who's watching, thank you. There's that guy, and his name, the Milo kid, looks like he was going to be invited to CPAC. Now he's not. He was going to have a book deal. Now he's not. Turns out that talking about kid diddling was a bit too far, and that's where you can't do that. Sorry, buddy, you can't defend that. So that's it for him, and I think that's about it for me tonight. Thanks everybody watching on the low quality thing. At least it worked. So there's that. But I appreciate everybody stopping by in the comments. It always make it much more interesting. We might do some radio next time. We'll see. I don't know. And then I've got the other idea to try and fix the whole computer thing and use the real camera. So anyway, thank you once again for hanging out and listening to me rant. And you guys have a good week. I'll see you next week. Next week. They're called weeks. Peace out. Good night.